Casino. You're watching us on 6abc.com, the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. All right, let's get to the man who covered the game today in Chicago for JAKIB Media. John McMullen joins us. And John, you suspected that this would be what you called a human nature game, and apparently it was that. The Eagles not on the razor's edge today, but did enough to get by, made some big plays, sacked some people. When you look at this game, what is your total evaluation?
Yeah, I'm proud of myself. I think this is exactly the way I thought it was going to go, and they kind of took this team for granted, understandably so. Difficult weather, which everybody talked about after the game. But the Bears weren't talented enough to take advantage of it. As good as Justin Fields is running the football, boy, he is not ready in the pocket. Just does not have a pocket presence. And it's really difficult for Chicago to sustain things offensively. They were better defensively than I gave them credit for coming in. Maybe they got a couple young defensive backs back from injury. Maybe that helped them. Jalen Johnson had a big game. It's tough to say he had a big game when A.J. Brown goes for 181, but A.J. specifically talked after the game how good he is as a corner. So, they had some decent things going on defensively, but yeah, I mean, they struggled. And if the Eagles took care of the football, they win this game easily, but they didn't take care of the football, especially in the first half.
Hey, John, Miles Sanders doesn't get a carry until it's like 6:28 left in the first half. And we're going into the game thinking, run the ball on the Chicago's team because they were giving up over 140 yards a game. You put them out of the misery early. Did anybody ask Sirianni about that, number one? And number two, how do they not attack Chicago's biggest weakness was defending the run?
Yeah, it's a good question, and we did ask, and, all Nick does, he's not going to talk specifics about game plan, Deacon, but, he mentioned it was part of what they thought they could take advantage of. Now, the Eagles are 13-1, so they generally think they have an advantage all over the place, and they're generally right. So they look at it and say, all right, we have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, and they both ended up with over 100 yards receiving. They both made big plays. Jalen's playing at an MVP level. They thought they had a huge advantage there. And some of these cold weather games, maybe the thought process is, well, we're going to try to run the ball. Maybe they outthought themselves a little bit, at least from my perspective. They don't think so. They think this was the way to go about it. They did, at the end of the day, they had 421 yards of offense. So if you take out the ball security issues, which is typically not a problem, this team came in plus 14. It's a pretty easy game. And I don't think people are having as many questions. But they had the two interceptions early, which were, bad throws, especially the first one from Jalen. And then you had the Miles Sanders fumble, his first fumble all year. So that kind of, I think, condensed things a little bit. But, everybody in this league, and I mean everybody, and you saw it with Dallas today, they have the big lead and give it up to Jacksonville. Every good team, Buffalo, Kansas City, if you want to call Minnesota, even San Francisco earlier in the year, good teams, they all have hiccups. And when the Eagles have hiccups, they still win the game, except for Washington.
John, talk about the sustainability of what the defense is doing right now. I don't think people have been keeping track, but the Eagles have racked up 19 sacks over the last 3 games. That is 6.2 sacks, per game right now. Hassan Reddick had 2 today. He was just all over the place, with the forced fumble. They're saying that Maddox recovered the fumble, but it looked to me like he caused it and recovered it. If that's the case,
I agree.
Yeah, looks like we're going to have back-to-back defensive players, NFC defensive players of the week, if that is the case. But he has 2 sacks. Hargrave has 2 sacks. and who was the other one that checked in with 2?
Josh Sweat.
Josh Sweat.
Hargrave.
Yeah, Josh Sweat has just been on fire. I mean, is it sustainable, as you look at what's coming down the pike, that they can continue to get there? And Jonathan Gannon has been dialing up the blitzes a little more. I've been watching, so I've been beating them up a little less, a lot less the last couple of weeks, John.
Yeah, but you know what's that? They got burned on the blitz on the touchdown to David Montgomery. So, you know, I'm looking at 3 consecutive games for the first time since 1997. They're up to 55 sacks on the season. The record for this franchise is 62 sacks. So is it sustainable? I don't think 5+ sacks a game is sustainable. I think a lot, like you look today and you see Justin Fields, like he holds on to the football. I mean, you're eventually going to go up against quarterbacks, and we've seen it in the past with Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, especially. If you sack those guys 3 times, you had a game for decisions.
Right.
They're not going to allow you to sack them. So part of it is they're playing quarterbacks who are willing to hold on to the football. And today was a really, really, really good example of that, because Justin Fields just does not get rid of the football. So that gives you an opportunity to pile up the sacks. They might not be able to keep those numbers up consistently from game to game to game, but the key to me is the pressure. Can they keep up the pressure? That's the sacks are dependent on a lot of things. Pressure, if you get pressure, you get pressure. And if you're speeding quarterbacks up, you're speeding quarterbacks up, and generally good things happen.
I will say this though, on that touchdown pass to David Montgomery, T.J. Edwards and Avonte Maddox need to communicate, because one of those guys has David Montgomery coming out of the backfield, and I know what the thought is. I've been in that situation before. You're sending 2 guys at the back is going to check and release. No, he released hot, and somebody has him man-to-man. So that's more of a mental mistake than it is a physical mistake when you talk about, him bringing pressure. And, you just – if you're going to bring pressure, the first thing that you got to secure, the first and foremost thing you got to secure is coverage. Whether that guy is check releasing or whether you got him right now or whether he's hot, you got to know who's got him. But you saw the same mistake, on the Jalen Hurts run. If that safety hits the other A-gap rather than coming in the same A-gap as the nose guard, then Jalen Hurts doesn't walk in the end zone from 22 yards.
Yeah, that was – it's funny you brought up. And I know I'm at the Bears. I'm at the mercy of the Bears, so I know the internet is unstable here. But that was the worst telegram blitz I've ever seen in my life. that the Bears tried to – and I was talking to Jason Kelsey about that after the game, because Jason's, obviously so adept at calling protections, and he's so good at it. And he said, look, if you do that correctly, Jalen's got nowhere to go.
Yep.
But they didn't do it correctly. And that's, when you're playing zero blitz like that, you don't do it correctly. You have a quarterback waltzing into the end zone, and that's what happened to Chicago. So it's kind of, sometimes you live by the sword, you die by the sword. But the Eagles kind of fell by it with the David Montgomery play. And my problem with that is they were so effective without the blitz. I'm not sure why he dialed it up at that point, because I don't think it was needed at that point. So if you don't pull it out of your pocket, you're probably not having that communication mistake.
John, the game has arrived. Well, at least it will on Christmas Eve. The Dallas Cowboys game 2, they have Dak Prescott back. They lost today. And so I'm wondering how you think this shapes this matchup. We were talking about the preparation for particular games, and the preparation may have not been on the razor's edge for this particular game. It has to be for this game coming up. How do you see this matchup?
Well, the Eagles don't have to win it now. So, there's they have a 3-game lead with 3 to play. So all they have to do is win one of their final 3 games to get where they want to be. Do they want to beat Dallas? Of course they want to beat Dallas. They're going to try to beat Dallas, but you're going to hear these questions. There is a safety net now. So that's the nice thing about the Cowboys collapsing against our old friend Doug Peterson and the Jags, and the fact that Dallas is done. They're cooked. They can win that game. They're still not winning the NFC East. And then I've already had the people throw this at me. It's hard to beat a team 3 times. I'm sure you've heard that 1,000 times, Mike. So maybe it's better to lose to the Cowboys if you see them in the playoffs down the road. I don't think this team thinks of it like that. They want to win this game. They're the better team. Now, 3rd consecutive road game on Christmas Eve. I looked at the schedule before the season started, and I circled that day, and I said the Eagles are losing that game. 3rd consecutive road game on Christmas Eve. That's a difficult spot. So it's nice to have a safety net.
Hey, John, clarify something for me if you can. I saw a comment on Twitter earlier when Nick Sirianni was asked about the 22-yard touchdown run by Jalen. He kind of deflected and shied away from giving a direct answer. When we had Lane Johnson on, Lane said it was a call play. But we're sitting there talking, how can you call that play until you see how the defense aligns? Can you tell me how much Sirianni deflected away and maybe why he wouldn't answer the question directly?
Well, Nick doesn't like to give up strategy because he might do it again. That's his thought process. And he told Jalen not to talk to us about it, so Jalen kind of talked around it. But Jason Kelce and Lane Johnson, as you mentioned, he talked to us about it. Jason gave me a long explanation about it. So basically, Jalen checked at the line. And they telegraphed the blitz. I mean, I saw it in the press box. Everybody saw it in the press box. It was a really, really bad blitz, and Jalen took advantage of it. So Kelce did a nice job too adjusting the protection. But as for why Nick doesn't want to explain stuff like that, he's big on competitive advantage. He doesn't want to give something that they might use again down the road.
John, I normally agree with you on everything, and I might have even agreed with you on looking at the schedule and seeing this game being on Christmas Eve, knowing it's the last of 3. But I think that, the Cowboys pretty much wrote a check their ass can't cash. And, with all the talk that's gone on and all the, negativity that's going on about Jalen Hurts. And I think, not only do they want to beat the Cowboys, but I think they want to prove a point. I think they want to prove the point that they're a better football team. And they want to prove the point that, sometimes you just need to, just keep your mouth shut and wait for games, to kind of show up. And, I think they're going to this game extremely motivated. Not only to beat the Cowboys, but to beat them, in great fashion.
Yeah, I mean, I think they want to win every game. I think this team is at the point where there's only one team in NFL history that's won 16 games, and that was the Patriots when they won 16-0, ultimately lost in the Super Bowl. It's the only team that's ever won 16 games in the regular season. The Eagles have a chance to make history. Would have been even nicer to try to go 17-0, but they want to win every game because they've gotten to this point and they've dominated this league to this point. And when they have games like this, and Jalen was joking about it because, supposedly we didn't ask him about the Arizona defense, but we did. And supposedly we didn't ask him about the Chicago defense, but we did. And he said every time that because everybody blames the media for everything, let's be honest, but every time we don't do something, the Eagles have a difficult time of it. Like we have anything to do with it. But they have this sense that they want to beat everybody, they want to make history, and they think they're the better team. So don't get me wrong, there's no doubts that they want to win this football game. They're the better team. All I'm pointing out at this point, now that was back in the preseason when I said that. At this point, it's nice to have a safety net. They don't have to win the game.
Yeah, John, but it's Dallas, man.
All right, John, listen, we appreciate you hanging around. Thank you very much. I know it's cold out there. I don't know what you're doing. Stay inside. Get room service or something before you come back. It's too cold out there in Chicago. All right, so this post-game show still has the drive of the game. We still have game balls to give up. And we'll have Dr. Bruce with some medical insights. That's coming up on the Pine Hill Hockey Eagles post-game show back at